This title is presented to you by soundlibra.com. For more audiobooks like this, click the link in the description or visit our website at soundlibra.com.
Just a quick note that while we're sharing strategies for mental well-being, this isn't medical advice, so please consult with a professional for your specific needs.
That's exactly right. We're here to equip you with practical strategies to finally stop overthinking. We're diving right into the heart of it all. We're going to explore what overthinking is, why it grabs hold of us, and its real impact on our lives.
That sounds like a much-needed conversation, Alex. So, to start us off, when we talk about overthinking, what exactly are we referring to? It's a term we hear a lot.
That's a great question, Lisa. Overthinking is essentially when your mind gets stuck in a loop of negative, unproductive thoughts. It's not just thinking, it's thinking excessively, often about past events or future possibilities, and not reaching a useful conclusion. Think of it like your brain's hamster wheel. It's spinning furiously, but you're not actually going anywhere. You're just using up energy and getting caught in the same cycle.
A hamster wheel. I can definitely picture that. It feels like you're doing something productively because your mind is so busy, but nothing is actually getting resolved. It's more about replaying worry and what ifs.
Precisely. And common hallmarks of overthinking are rumination, that's dwelling on past mistakes or regrets, and worry, which is focusing on potential future problems. It often manifests as excessive analyzing, scrutinizing every detail, and creating worst-case scenarios in your mind. You might ask yourself endless questions like, what if I said the wrong thing? Or did I make the right decision?
And it can feel overwhelming, right? Like your thoughts are just bombarding you. What does this constant mental activity actually do to us, beyond just feeling stressed?
The impact is significant and far-reaching. For starters, it robs us of our present moment. While you're lost in thought about a past conversation or a future event, you're not truly experiencing what's happening now. This can lead to a feeling of being disconnected from life. It also drains our mental energy. Every time you engage in overthinking, you're expending a lot of cognitive resources, which can leave you feeling fatigued and less able to focus on tasks that actually matter.
So, it's not just an annoyance. It directly affects our well-being and our ability to function. And I imagine it also impacts our decision-making. That's something important to consider.
Absolutely. Overthinking is a major contributor to decision fatigue. When you endlessly analyze every potential outcome of every minor choice, you quickly deplete your ability to make effective decisions. This can lead to procrastination or making impulsive choices just to escape the mental burden. And remember that feeling of exhaustion? It also affects our physical health and our emotional state. Chronic overthinking is linked to anxiety, depression, and even sleep disturbances.
It really creates this negative feedback loop. The more we overthink, the more stressed and tired we become, which then makes us more prone to overthinking. So, how does this spiral start? What are the root causes of overthinking?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's where we'll really start to build our foundation for this series. Often, overthinking stems from a place of fear. It could be the fear of making mistakes, the fear of failure, or even the fear of the unknown. We try to control these uncertainties by overanalyzing them, hoping that if we think about it enough, we can somehow prevent negative outcomes.
So, it's almost like a misguided attempt at self-protection, trying to think our way out of potential problems, which ironically creates more problems.
Exactly. For some, it's also tied to perfectionism, the belief that everything must be done perfectly, leading to constant self-criticism and an inability to move forward until every detail is meticulously examined. We also see it in individuals with high anxiety levels, with a predisposition to worry and anticipate threats is amplified. And sometimes it's simply a learned habit. If we grew up in an environment where constant worry was the norm, we might unconsciously adopt that same pattern.
That makes sense. It's not necessarily a flaw in our character, but a pattern of thought, often driven by underlying anxieties that we've developed. And this series, The Overthinking Cure, is all about learning how to change that pattern, isn't it?
That's the promise, Lisa. This series is designed to give you tangible tools and strategies to understand and ultimately overcome this tendency. We're not just going to talk about the problem, we're going to equip you to actively solve it. We'll be diving deep into understanding your specific triggers, learning techniques to anchor yourself in the present, and even rewriting the narratives that often fuel our overthinking. Welcome back. Last time, we introduced the pervasive nature of overthinking. Today, we're going to ignite the self-awareness spark by understanding your personal overthinking triggers. This is arguably the most crucial first step on our journey.
That's right, Alex. If we don't know what sets off our overthinking, how can we possibly hope to manage it? It's like trying to stop a leaky faucet without knowing where the drip is coming from. You can't fix it if you can't find the source.
Exactly. So what are these triggers? Think of them as the specific events, thoughts, or even internal feelings that act like a flicked switch, sending you spiraling down that familiar rabbit hole of anxious rumination. They're the red flags that signal the beginning of an overthinking episode.
And these triggers can be so incredibly varied, can't they? What might send one person into a tizzy could be completely insignificant to another. We all have our unique set of vulnerabilities.
Absolutely. Let's explore some common categories of triggers. One major one is social anxiety. This can manifest in many ways. For instance, a single misinterpreted text message. You read it, and immediately your brain starts dissecting every possible negative meaning.
Oh, I know that one. Did they mean that sarcastically? Am I bothering them? Am I not a good friend? And before you know it, you've rewritten the entire conversation with yourself, filled with imagined slights.
Precisely. Or consider a social gathering. You might find yourself replaying every interaction, wondering if you said the wrong thing, if you were perceived as awkward, or if everyone else was having a better time. This constant self-scrutiny is a classic trigger. We ruminate on past conversations, present interactions, and imagined future social encounters.
It's exhausting because you're essentially trying to control what other people think, which is impossible. And that impossibility fuels more overthinking.
Exactly. Another powerful trigger is the pressure of deadlines and upcoming tasks. When you have a big project or an important presentation looming, your mind can jump into overdrive.
This is particularly true if you're a perfectionist. The thought of not doing it perfectly, or even just not doing it well, can become overwhelming.
Yes, that's a fantastic point, Lisa. Perfectionism is a significant amplifier of deadline-related overthinking. The fear of failure or the fear of not meeting your own impossibly high standards leads to endless what-ifs. What if I miss a crucial detail? What if my idea isn't good enough? What if I can't deliver on time? These questions can paralyze you.
And that paralysis can actually make you less likely to start the task, which then creates more pressure and more overthinking. It's a vicious cycle.
A very common one. Beyond social situations and work pressures, our internal states can also be powerful triggers. Lack of sleep, for example, is a huge one. When you're tired, your emotional regulation is compromised and your brain is less able to cope with stress.
Suddenly, small worries seem enormous. A minor inconvenience feels like a catastrophe.
It's like your brain's defense system is down. Similarly, stress and anxiety themselves can be triggers. If you're already feeling overwhelmed by life in general, even a small new worry can set off a cascade of anxious thoughts. It's not just the new worry. It's the fact that your system is already overloaded.
So, it's not just external events. It's our internal environment too. We might be predisposed to overthinking when we're feeling uncertain about the future, for instance.
Uncertainty is a massive trigger for many people. Our brains crave predictability and control. And when we face situations where the outcome is unknown, it can feel deeply unsettling. This can lead to constant hypothetical scenarios about what might happen, both good and bad.
This is that classic what if thinking, but amplified because the what ifs are about large, potentially negative future outcomes.
Precisely. And it's important to recognize that our thought patterns are deeply ingrained. These are the habitual ways our minds tend to approach problems or uncomfortable feelings. Overthinking is often a dominant thought pattern for many people. Recognizing these patterns is the first act of taking control. Instead of being a passive passenger in your own mind, you start to become the driver.
So, we're not just looking at what triggers us, but how our minds tend to react once triggered. It's about identifying the specific narratives our brains start spinning.
Exactly. Let's talk about those narratives. For instance, a common narrative when facing a challenge might be, I'm going to fail. Or when feeling socially anxious, everyone is judging me. These aren't necessarily true. They're the stories your overthinking mind is telling you. Identifying these specific narratives is key to understanding why a particular event becomes a trigger. It connects the external event to your internal interpretation.
It sounds like this is an exercise in really digging deep and being honest with ourselves. It's about observing our thoughts without judgment, at least initially, to just understand what's happening.
That's the goal. And to do this effectively, we need to become investigators of our own minds. Think of yourself as a detective. When you notice yourself starting to ruminate, pause. Ask yourself, what just happened? What was I thinking right before I started spiraling? What thoughts followed? What feelings accompanied them?
So, it's about building a mental map of our overthinking. Like charting a course through a stormy sea, we need to know the landmarks that signal rough waters are ahead.
That's a great analogy. Let's consider another common internal trigger, loneliness. When we feel disconnected or isolated, our minds can start to generate fears about being unloved or forgotten. This can lead to excessive worry about our relationships and social standing.
It's interesting how our core needs, like belonging, can become such fertile ground for overthinking when they feel unmet.
Indeed, and sometimes the trigger isn't a specific event, but a general feeling of dissatisfaction or a lack of purpose. When we feel stuck or unfulfilled, our minds can start to churn with questions about our life choices, our career path, or our overall direction.
This is that existential dread that can creep in, leading to endless reevaluation of our lives. Am I on the right path? Should I have done something different?
Precisely. And the key takeaway here is that understanding these triggers is not about blaming yourself for overthinking. It's about gaining crucial insight. It's about empowerment. When you know what sets you off, you're much better equipped to anticipate and manage those moments. It's the first step in disarming the overthinking habit.
So, to recap for our listeners, we've discussed how identifying overthinking triggers is the essential first step. These triggers can be external events like social situations and deadlines, or internal states like lack of sleep or general anxiety. We've also touched upon how perfectionism and uncertainty can amplify these triggers, and how recognizing our ingrained thought patterns and the specific narratives our minds spin is vital. It's about becoming an observer of your own mental landscape, much like a detective investigating a case.
Excellent summary, Lisa. The goal is to see these triggers not as insurmountable obstacles, but as valuable signals. Signals that tell you, pay attention, this is a moment where overthinking might take hold. This is an opportunity to practice. And by practicing this self-awareness, we begin to build the foundation for all the tools and techniques we'll explore.
So, the homework for our listeners is to start paying attention. What are those moments when you find yourself falling into an overthinking spiral? What was happening just before it? What were you thinking? What were you feeling?
Exactly. Become that mind detective. Observe, without judgment and gather the evidence. This self-awareness is the spark that will truly begin the process of curing your overthinking.
Next episode, the power of grounding, anchoring yourself in the now.
Thanks for listening. Welcome back to the Overthinking Cure. Last time, we explored understanding your overthinking triggers, sparking that crucial self-awareness. Today, we're diving into our first practical strategy, a powerful technique to pull you back from the brink of spiraling thoughts, the power of grounding.
And what a vital topic this is, Alex. Overthinking, by its very nature, pulls us out of the present moment, doesn't it? We get lost in what ifs and should haves, completely detaching from where we actually are, right here, right now.
Exactly, Lisa. Our minds become elaborate stages for hypothetical scenarios, both good and bad. We mentally rehearse conversations that haven't happened, replay past events with infinite variations, or get stuck in anxieties about the future. This constant mental jumping takes us far away from reality.
And it feels so draining. It's like your brain is running a marathon without your body ever leaving the couch. So, grounding is our way of bringing ourselves back to the physical reality of the present, right?
Precisely. Think of it like an anchor when your ship is tossed about by a storm. In this case, a storm of anxious thoughts. You drop anchor to stabilize yourself. Grounding techniques are those anchors for your mind. They gently, or sometimes firmly, redirect your attention away from the swirling thoughts and back to your immediate sensory experience.
That makes so much sense. It's about reconnecting with our senses. What are some of the science-backed reasons why this works so well to interrupt those thought loops?
Great question. When we're overthinking, our sympathetic nervous system, often called the fight or flight response, can get activated. This means our heart rate might increase, our breathing gets shallower, and our body prepares for perceived danger, even if that danger is just imagined. Grounding techniques engage the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the rest and digest response. This helps to calm our physiological arousal.
So, it's not just a mental trick, it's actually calming our body's biological stress response.
Absolutely. By focusing on sensory input, what you can see, hear, touch, smell, and even taste, you're essentially giving your brain a different kind of information to process. Instead of diving deeper into abstract worries, your brain is occupied with concrete, real-time stimuli. This shift in focus provides a much-needed break from the overthinking cycle. It breaks the momentum of the anxious thought pattern.
And you mentioned how crucial self-awareness was in identifying when you're starting to spiral. Grounding ties into that beautifully because it helps us recognize when we've drifted off course.
It does. Self-awareness tells you, hey, I'm starting to overthink. Grounding provides the tool to say, okay, now I'm going to bring myself back. It's a dynamic duo. As you become more aware of the early signs of overthinking, you could deploy grounding techniques more proactively.
I'm eager to hear some concrete techniques. What's a simple one we can try right now, so to speak?
Let's start with one of the most popular and effective, the 5-4-3-2-1 method. It's incredibly versatile and can be used almost anywhere. So, to do this, you consciously bring your attention to 5 things you can see. What do you see around you right now, Lisa?
Uh, I see my microphone, a stack of papers, the studio light, your enthusiastic face, and the wall.
Perfect. Now, shift your attention to 4 things you can touch or feel. You might feel the texture of your shirt, the chair beneath you, the air on your skin, or maybe the surface of a table if you're resting your hands on it.
Okay, I feel the fabric of my sweater, the cool surface of the desk, my feet inside my shoes, and the gentle pressure of the microphone against my hand.
Excellent. Next, focus on three things you can hear. This requires a bit of active listening. What sounds are reaching you?
I hear the hum of the equipment, the distant traffic outside, and your voice.
Fantastic. Now, bring your awareness to two things you can smell. This might be more subtle, perhaps the faint scent of coffee or the clean air in the studio. If you can't detect any distinct smells, that's okay. Just acknowledge the absence of strong scents.
Hmm. I think I smell a hint of cleaning product and maybe just the neutral smell of the room itself.
And finally, name one thing you can taste. It might be the lingering taste of your last meal or drink, or simply the neutral taste in your mouth.
Just the taste of water, I think.
Wonderful. You've just completed the 5-4-3-2-1 method. By actively engaging your senses in this structured way, you've pulled your attention away from your thoughts and anchored it in the present moment. It's a complete sensory inventory.
Wow, that really does feel different. It's like a switch flips. My mind feels much quieter, more settled. And it was so easy. I could do that waiting in line in a meeting, even in the middle of a stressful conversation, if I can take a moment.
That's the beauty of it. It's accessibility. You don't need any special equipment or a quiet space. Another very effective grounding technique, and one that's fundamental, is mindful breathing. Because our breath is always with us, and it's a direct link to our physical body.
Mindful breathing. We often associate that with meditation, but you're saying it can be used as a quick grounding tool?
Absolutely. When we're overthinking, our breath often becomes shallow and rapid. Mindful breathing involves intentionally returning your focus to the sensation of your breath. You're not trying to change your breath, just notice it. So, you might simply pay attention to the feeling of the air entering your nostrils, filling your lungs, and then leaving your body.
So it's about noticing the inhale and the exhale.
Exactly. You can observe the rise and fall of your chest or abdomen. You might feel the air at your nostrils. The key is to gently bring your attention back to your breath every time your mind wanders, and it will wander. That's the nature of the mind. The practice isn't about eliminating thoughts. It's about noticing when you've been carried away by them, and then gently guiding your attention back to your breath.
That gentle redirection sounds much more manageable than fighting off thoughts.
It's far more effective. Imagine your breath is a gentle current. You're not trying to stop the river of thoughts. You're just resting your awareness on that steady current of breath. If you find yourself drifting downstream into worry, you simply notice and gently ease back onto your breath. You can even add a simple counting element. Inhale, count 1. Exhale, count 2. Continue up to 10, then start again at 1. This provides a little more structure for your focus.
That counting can be a great anchor for the mind, especially when it's trying to race ahead.
It really can. And for those who find noticing their breath a bit abstract, you can also try a body scan. This is another way to connect with your physical self. You systematically bring your attention to different parts of your body, from your toes all the way up to the crown of your head.
So, feeling your feet on the floor, the sensation in your legs, your torso,
Precisely. You're not judging or trying to change anything. You're just observing sensations. Do you feel warmth, coolness, pressure, tingling? Any sensation at all is a sign that you are present in your body. When your mind drifts, gently bring it back to the part of your body you are focusing on. This technique is particularly helpful if overthinking is manifesting as physical tension. It helps you locate where you're holding that tension and simply acknowledge it without needing to fix it immediately.
these techniques all seem to share a common thread, getting out of our heads and into our bodies and the present moment.
That's an excellent summary, Lisa. The core principle of grounding is to interrupt the cognitive loop of overthinking by anchoring yourself in reality through your senses and your physical presence. It's about shifting your locus of attention from the internal world of thoughts and worries to the external world of immediate sensory experience.
So, to recap, overthinking pulls us out of the present. Grounding techniques are our anchors, bringing us back to reality. We can use the 5-4-3-2-1 method to engage all our senses, mindful breathing to focus on our breath, and body scans to connect with physical sensations.
Exactly. These are accessible tools you can use anywhere, anytime. The more you practice them, the more readily available they become when you need them most. Think of them as mental survival tools for navigating the storms of overthinking.
It's empowering to know we have these techniques at our disposal. It shifts the dynamic from feeling helpless against our thoughts to having concrete actions we can take.
And that empowerment is key to starting to cure overthinking. We've learned the importance of self-awareness in identifying when we've drifted into overthinking, and now we have the practical skill of grounding to bring ourselves back. It's a crucial step in managing those spirals.
It really is.
Next episode, cognitive reframing, rewriting your inner script. Welcome back. Last time, we discussed grounding and anchoring ourselves in the present moment, learning techniques to pull us out of spiraling thoughts.
That's right, Alex. Grounding helps stop overthinking and brings us back to reality. But what happens after we've stopped the immediate spiral? Our minds often have deeply ingrained thought patterns that can quickly drag us back in.
Exactly, Lisa. And that's where today's topic comes in, cognitive reframing. Think of it as rewriting your inner script, not by ignoring your problems, but by changing how you talk to yourself about them. It's about taking those anxious, unhelpful thoughts and giving them a more realistic and constructive makeover.
Rewriting our inner script feels empowering. So, if grounding is like putting out an immediate fire, cognitive reframing is like making sure the fire doesn't start again by changing the fuel.
That's a great way to put it. Many of us fall into predictable ways of thinking that fuel our overthinking. These are often called cognitive distortions, and they're like mental shortcuts that lead us astray. They're not based on objective reality, but on our fears and assumptions.
Cognitive distortions. That sounds a bit academic. Can we break down what these are and maybe give some examples?
Absolutely. The first one we'll tackle is a big one, catastrophizing. This is when you expect the worst possible outcome, even when logically it's unlikely. You imagine a minor mistake snowballing into a disaster.
Oh, I know this one intimately. For example, if I send an email with a small typo, I might immediately think, oh no, my boss will think I'm incompetent, I'll get fired, and then I won't be able to pay my rent. It's a rapid descent into doomsday.
Precisely. And notice how quickly you jump from a small typo to losing your job and home. This is catastrophizing in action. So how do we reframe this? The key is to question the severity of the outcome. Ask yourself, what is the absolute worst that could realistically happen? And even if that unlikely worst case scenario happened, how would I cope with it?
So, for the email typo, I'd ask myself, what's the worst that could really happen? Probably my boss points out the typo and asks me to fix it. Or maybe they don't even notice. The chances of being fired over a single typo are astronomically small. And if, by some miracle, it did lead to a conversation about my performance, I could handle that conversation. I'm a capable person.
Exactly. You're challenging the automatic, exaggerated fear and replacing it with a more rational assessment. You're creating a more balanced narrative. Another common distortion is black and white thinking, sometimes called all or nothing thinking. This is seeing things in extremes. If something isn't perfect, it's a complete failure.
This is me at the gym. If I miss one workout because I'm sick, I think, well, I've ruined my entire fitness routine for the month. I might as well just give up, instead of seeing it as a minor setback and just getting back on track.
That's a perfect example. The reframe here is to recognize the shades of gray. Acknowledge that most situations aren't purely good or bad. Ask yourself, is there a middle ground? Can I see this situation from a more nuanced perspective? For your missed workout, the reframe is recognizing that one missed session doesn't erase weeks of effort. It's just a blip, not a derailment. You can always pick up where you left off or adjust your plan slightly.
So instead of I've ruined everything, it's okay, I missed a workout. I'll aim for my next scheduled one. My overall progress is still intact.
That's the spirit. Another distortion is mind reading. This is assuming you know what other people are thinking, usually negatively, without any solid evidence. You interpret their actions or words as proof of their negative thoughts about you.
This happens all the time at social gatherings. Someone doesn't immediately laugh at my joke, and I instantly think, they think I'm awkward and unfunny. I should just leave.
And the reframe for mind reading is to seek evidence. Ask yourself, what concrete evidence do I have that this person is thinking this way? Could there be other explanations for their behavior? In your case, perhaps they didn't hear you, they were distracted, or they just don't have a sense of humor about that particular joke. It's rarely about you. You can even, if appropriate, seek clarification rather than just assuming.
That distinction is crucial, assuming versus seeking evidence. It feels safer to just assume the worst sometimes because we feel like we're prepared, but it actually just makes us more anxious.
Precisely. We're setting ourselves up for a self-fulfilling prophecy of anxiety. Another distortion is fortune telling. This is predicting negative outcomes as if they are facts. It's similar to catastrophizing, but often without the dramatic flair. It's more of a quiet certainty that things will go wrong.
Like when I'm preparing for a presentation and I just know I'm going to forget my words or my slides will malfunction. It's not a fear, it's a foregone conclusion in my mind.
Exactly. The reframe here is to acknowledge that you cannot predict the future with certainty. Ask yourself, what is the evidence for this prediction? What is the evidence against it? What are other possible outcomes? For your presentation, the evidence for forgetting words might be that you're nervous, but the evidence against it is that you've prepared thoroughly, you've practiced, and you know the material. You can also plan for contingencies like having notes ready. This preparation, rather than the fortune telling, is what provides real confidence.
So it's about separating what might happen from what will happen and focusing on what I can control, like preparation.
You've got it. Now that we've introduced a few distortions and reframing questions, let's talk about how to put this into practice. It's a skill, and like any skill, it takes conscious effort and repetition.
So, what's the step-by-step process?
First, you need to identify the unhelpful thought. This is where your self-awareness from previous episodes comes in. When you notice yourself overthinking, pause and ask, what is the specific thought that's making me anxious? Write it down if it helps.
Okay, first step. Catch the thought. Great.
Second, identify the cognitive distortion at play. Is it catastrophizing, black and white thinking, mind reading, fortune telling? Looking at our examples, can you start to spot which pattern your thought fits into?
Right. So, if I'm thinking, this is the worst meeting ever, I can't stand another minute, I might recognize that as possibly all or nothing thinking or overgeneralization.
Excellent. Now, for the crucial step, challenge the thought. This is where you use those reframing questions we discussed. Ask yourself, what's the evidence? Are there alternative explanations? What's the worst that could realistically happen? How would I cope? What's a more balanced or helpful perspective?
This is where the hard work happens, I imagine. It feels easier to just accept the negative thought.
It does at first, but the more you practice, the easier it becomes. You're essentially training your brain to think in healthier ways. Imagine you're a detective examining your own thoughts, looking for facts, not just assumptions.
A thought detective. I like that visual.
And finally, the fourth step, replace the thought. Based on your challenging, what is a more balanced, realistic, and helpful thought? This isn't about positive affirmations like everything is amazing. It's about shifting to a statement that is grounded in reality, acknowledging challenges, but also embracing your ability to cope and persevere.
So, if my initial thought was, I'm definitely going to mess up this presentation, and I've challenged it. My replacement thought might be. I've prepared well, and while I might feel nervous, I have a plan to manage my delivery, and I will do my best.
Perfectly said. You're replacing an absolute negative prediction with a realistic assessment of your preparation and a commitment to doing your best. This process is powerful because it interrupts the negative feedback loop of overthinking. You're not just passively accepting anxious thoughts, you're actively engaging with them and reshaping them.
It's like we're learning to edit our own mental movie. Instead of letting it play out with a dramatic, fearful soundtrack, we can switch to something more encouraging and realistic.
That's a fantastic analogy, Lisa. And remember, this isn't about eliminating negative thoughts entirely. It's about decreasing their power and frequency. It's about learning to respond to challenges and uncertainties with a more resilient and balanced mindset. The more you practice identifying those distortions and asking yourself those probing questions, the more automatic and natural this process will become.
So, to recap for our listeners, cognitive reframing is about rewriting your inner script. We first identify unhelpful thoughts, then we spot the cognitive distortion at play, like catastrophizing or black and white thinking. Next, we challenge those thoughts by asking critical questions, like where's the evidence and what's a more realistic perspective. Finally, we replace the unhelpful thought with a more balanced and helpful one.
Exactly. You're not trying to force yourself to be happy. You're trying to see reality more clearly. And in doing so, you reduce the fuel for your overthinking. It's a practical, actionable way to gain more control over your thought patterns.
This feels like a really significant step. It's not just about managing symptoms, it feels like we're addressing one of the root causes of overthinking.
That's precisely the idea. By reframing our thoughts, we're building a stronger inner foundation. Next episode, confronting decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue. I definitely feel like I overthink when I have too many choices. I'm looking forward to that.
Welcome back. Last time, we explored cognitive reframing. Today, we're discussing something that often fuels those spirals, decision fatigue.
Decision fatigue. It sounds exhausting just saying it. I know I've experienced it. You've made 10 tiny choices before 9 a.m., and then when you have to make a slightly bigger one, your brain just feels mush.
Exactly. And that mushy feeling is the very real consequence of decision fatigue. It's what happens when your mental energy, your willpower, gets depleted by making too many choices. Think of your willpower like a muscle. You can only lift so much weight before it gets tired and starts to ache. Every decision, no matter how small, takes a little bit of that willpower.
So, the more decisions we make, the less energy we have for the important ones? That makes so much sense. It's like the more tiny pebbles we pick up, the less strength we have to lift a boulder.
That's a fantastic analogy, Lisa. For overthinkers, this is a double whammy. Not only do we tend to overthink which decision to make, but we also often get stuck in a loop of making even minor choices. Should I have black coffee or tea? What route should I take to work? Should I reply to this email now or later? Each of these little mental ping-pong matches drains that precious willpower.
And then when a truly significant decision comes along, like a career change or a major purchase, we're already running on empty. Our ability to logically weigh options and confidently choose is compromised. We're more likely to fall back into overthinking, paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice because our decision-making reserves are depleted.
Precisely. The good news is we can actively combat decision fatigue. The first step, as you've already hinted at, is conservation. We need to recognize which decisions are truly important and which can be simplified or even eliminated.
How do we do that? Are we talking about just not deciding things? That feels a bit chaotic.
Not quite elimination, but rather intention and standardization. A great strategy is to automate or standardize as many low-stakes decisions as possible. Think about it. Do you really need to spend mental energy deciding what to wear every single morning? Many successful people famously wore the same thing every day. They removed that decision from their routine, freeing up mental bandwidth.
So, building a uniform wardrobe? That's a bit extreme for me, but I can see the principle. Maybe I could pre-select my outfits for the week on Sunday. That's still a decision, but I'm doing it once, when my energy is relatively high, instead of every single morning.
Exactly. You're batching those decisions. Another area is food. Planning your meals for the week can save you a surprising amount of mental energy each day debating what to cook or eat. And, of course, this connects back to our previous discussion on cognitive reframing. When we reframe our perspective on decisions, we can reduce the weight we assign to less important ones. If you understand that a suboptimal choice for lunch won't derail your entire life, the decision becomes less daunting.
That's a good reminder. The reframing from last time helps here by telling our brain, hey, this isn't a life or death situation, it's just lunch. So, to recap this first point, conserve your mental energy by automating or standardizing routine decisions. Think about your wardrobe, your meals, even the time you wake up.
Excellent summary. Now, the second strategy is setting boundaries. This is crucial for protecting your decision-making capacity. This means learning to say no to things that aren't essential or don't align with your priorities. Every time you say yes to something that drains your energy without a significant return, you're depleting your reserves.
Saying no can be so hard, though, especially if it involves other people's requests or expectations. It feels selfish sometimes.
I understand that feeling completely. But consider it this way. By saying no to things that aren't serving you, you're actually saying a more powerful yes to the things that truly matter. It's about prioritizing your mental well-being and your ability to make impactful decisions later on. It's not selfish, it's strategic self-preservation. Think of our muscle analogy again. If you keep lifting lighter weights throughout the day, you won't have the strength for the heavy lifts you need to do.
That's a helpful way to look at it. It's about ensuring you have the capacity for the really important stuff. So, setting boundaries means saying no to non-essential commitments.
Correct. And this can also apply to external influences. Limit the number of options presented to you when possible. For instance, when shopping, if you're bombarded with hundreds of choices, it's overwhelming. If you can narrow down your options beforehand, perhaps by doing some research and identifying just a few highly rated products, the actual decision-making process becomes much smoother.
So, I could tell myself, I'm only going to look at 3 different types of blenders, rather than browsing an entire store's worth of options.
Precisely. You're creating your own decision-friendly environment. This brings us to our third key strategy, implementing decision-making frameworks. These are structured approaches that help you make choices more efficiently, especially for those more complex decisions.
Frameworks? Like rules for making decisions? It sounds a little rigid, but I'm curious.
They're structured, yes, but flexible. One simple framework is the three questions approach. Before making a significant decision, ask yourself, 1. Is this decision truly necessary right now? 2. What are the potential positive and negative outcomes of each option? And 3. What feels like the most aligned choice for my long-term goals and values?
Okay, so, is it necessary? What are the pros and cons? And what aligns with my goals? That's quite manageable. It breaks down a potentially overwhelming process.
Indeed. Another framework, especially useful when you're feeling overwhelmed by possibilities, is the satisficing concept. It's a blend of satisfying and sufficing. Instead of searching for the absolute perfect option, which can lead to endless deliberation and dissatisfaction, satisficing means finding an option that is good enough and meets your essential criteria.
Good enough. That's a powerful concept for an overthinker, isn't it? We're always striving for perfect. But if something is good enough, and it allows us to move forward and conserve our energy for other things, that's actually a win.
It absolutely is a win. It's about progress over perfection. For example, when choosing a restaurant for a group, instead of trying to find a place that everyone will absolutely love, you might aim for a place that has good reviews, a diverse menu, and is within everyone's budget. That's satisficing. It gets the job done efficiently and with a high probability of satisfaction.
So, to recap, we have three main ways to combat decision fatigue: conserving energy by automating and standardizing routine choices, setting boundaries by learning to say no and limiting external influences, and implementing decision making frameworks like the three question rule or the concept of satisficing to make choices more efficiently.
Brilliantly put, Lisa. By adopting these strategies, we can significantly reduce the drain of decision fatigue. This allows us to approach important decisions with a clearer, more energized mind, reducing the likelihood of falling into those overthinking spirals. Remember, a well-rested mind is a more confident mind, and a confident mind is less likely to get stuck in the what-ifs.
It's all interconnected, isn't it? From the cognitive reframing we discussed last time to these practical strategies for managing our decision making energy. It shows that overcoming overthinking isn't about one magic bullet, but a suite of tools we can use.
Exactly. And speaking of tools for clarity, we're going to introduce a deeply effective practice for unpacking those swirling thoughts, journaling. We'll explore how putting pen to paper can bring incredible insight and calm.
Journaling for clarity. That sounds like the perfect follow up to today's discussion on decision making. I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. So, to wrap up today, remember, conserve your mental energy, set firm boundaries, and use frameworks to guide your choices. By doing so, you'll confront decision fatigue and make choices with newfound confidence. Next episode, journaling for clarity, unpacking your thoughts on paper. Welcome back. Last time on the Overthinking Cure, we discussed combating decision fatigue. Today, we're exploring an incredibly powerful tool for untangling spiraling thoughts, journaling.
Journaling. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? Just writing things down. Yet, I'm already feeling like there's more to it than that. Alex, how exactly does writing down our jumbled thoughts help us stop overthinking?
That's a great question, Lisa, and it gets right to the heart of it. Overthinking often happens because our thoughts are swirling around inside our heads. They're abstract, hard to grab onto, and they can seem overwhelming. When you put those thoughts onto paper or a screen, you're essentially externalizing them. You're creating a tangible record of your internal landscape.
Externalizing them, so pulling them out of the mental fog and making them something you can actually see?
Precisely. And seeing them allows you to interact with them differently. Think of it like this. If you have a tangled ball of yarn in your hands, it's hard to see where the knots are or how to untangle them. But if you lay the yarn out on a table, you can clearly see the loops and snags, and you can start to systematically work them out. Journaling does that for our thoughts. It provides distance and perspective.
That's a fantastic analogy. So it's not just about venting, it's about creating an organized mess that we can then sort through?
Exactly. And the act of writing itself can be calming. As you focus on forming the words, your mind naturally slows down from that rapid fire overthinking pace. You're engaging a different part of your brain, a more deliberate, linear process, and this can break the cycle of anxiety-driven rumination.
I can see how that would help. Sometimes, when I'm overthinking, my thoughts jump from one worry to the next so quickly that I can't even pinpoint what I'm actually worried about.
That's incredibly common. And journaling is a fantastic way to identify those recurring themes or specific worries. There are many ways to journal, and the beauty is that you can tailor it to your needs. One of the most effective methods for clarity is free writing. Have you ever tried just setting a timer for, say, 5 or 10 minutes and writing continuously without stopping, without censoring yourself, and without worrying about grammar or punctuation.
I have, but I often get stuck. I'll write a few sentences, then stop, then write a few more. It doesn't feel very continuous.
The key is to keep the pen moving or your fingers typing. If you get stuck, just write, I don't know what to write, or I'm stuck until a new thought emerges. The goal isn't to write something profound, it's to simply let the thoughts flow. This initial free writing session can unearth anxieties, assumptions, or beliefs that you weren't even consciously aware of.
So, it's like a brain dump, just getting everything out there.
A very organized brain dump. After you've done some free writing, you can then go back and look at what you've written. This is where the real clarity begins to emerge. You might start to notice patterns. For example, you might see that you're consistently worrying about a particular upcoming event, or that you tend to use a lot of self-critical language.
So that's where the connection to cognitive reframing comes in. Remember, in an earlier episode, we talked about challenging negative thought patterns? Once I see those patterns written down, I can start to challenge them.
Exactly. Journaling provides the raw material for cognitive reframing. Instead of trying to reframe thoughts that are just fleeting impressions in your mind, you have concrete sentences and phrases to work with. You can ask yourself, is this thought supported by evidence? Is there another way to look at this situation? Is this thought helpful?
That makes so much sense. And you mentioned decision making from an earlier episode. How does journaling help with that?
When you're facing a big decision, overthinking can lead to paralysis. You get caught up in all the potential outcomes, the what ifs. Journaling can help by allowing you to explore each option more systematically. You can dedicate a section of your journal to option A and another to option B.
And what do you write when exploring each option?
You can list the pros and cons, the potential benefits and drawbacks, any fears or excitements associated with each choice. You can even write a paragraph from the perspective of yourself a year from now, having made option A, and then another from the perspective of making option B. This future gazing can bring a surprising amount of clarity about which path feels more aligned with your long-term goals or values. It helps to move past the immediate emotional swirl and connect with a more reasoned perspective.
So, it's like running a mental simulation on paper.
A very effective mental simulation. Beyond free writing, there are also guided journaling techniques. These use prompts to direct your thoughts. Prompts can be incredibly helpful when you feel lost or unsure where to start. For example, today's prompts might be, what is one thought that has been bothering me lately, and what's the worst-case scenario I'm imagining? Or, what is a small step I could take today to move forward with a challenging task?
I like that. It gives you a clear starting point. What are some other types of guided prompts that could be useful for overthinkers?
Great question. You could use prompts focused on gratitude. What are three things I am grateful for today, no matter how small? This shifts your focus from potential problems to present positives. Another category is future-oriented prompts. What is one thing I want to accomplish this week? And what's the first step? Or what does a calm and peaceful day look like for me?
Thinking about what a peaceful day looks like, that sounds like it could help visualize a desired state, which then makes it easier to work towards.
Absolutely. And then there are prompts that encourage self-compassion. What would I say to a friend who is going through what I'm experiencing? This often reveals a kinder, more understanding perspective that we rarely apply to ourselves. And prompts that help you identify your core values. What is most important to me in life? And how can my current actions reflect that?
Wow, that's a lot of angles to approach it from. So, to recap for everyone listening, journaling helps us by externalizing our thoughts, giving us distance and perspective. The act of writing itself can slow down our minds, and by seeing our thoughts on paper, we can identify patterns and recurring themes. This then becomes the fuel for cognitive reframing. And when it comes to decisions, journaling allows us to explore options systematically, like running mental simulations.
You've got it, Lisa. And it's important to remember that there's no single right way to journal. Experiment with free writing, with different sets of prompts, different times of day. Some people prefer handwriting in a physical journal. while others find typing on a computer or tablet more efficient. The most important thing is consistency and intentionally using the written word to gain insight.
And I imagine that over time, as you review your past entries, you might even spot how you've overcome similar challenges before. That could be a huge confidence booster.
It absolutely is. Looking back at past entries can be a powerful reminder of your resilience and growth. You can see how you navigated difficult periods, how your perspective has evolved, and how you've applied strategies that worked. It turns your personal history into a source of wisdom and encouragement.
So, if we're feeling stuck in a spiral or just overwhelmed by our own thoughts, taking even just 10 minutes to write can make a significant difference.
Precisely. It's a practice that builds over time. The more you engage with your thoughts through writing, the more adept you become at spotting unproductive patterns and the more easily you can access clarity. It's like building a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger and more responsive it becomes.
It really does sound like such a powerful and accessible tool. Externalizing, gaining perspective, reframing, and informed decision making, all through the simple act of writing.
Exactly. It's a fundamental step in mastering your inner world and moving away from reactive overthinking towards proactive clarity. And it sets us up beautifully for our next step, activating your action bias.
Next episode, activating your action bias, moving from thought to deed.
Welcome back to the Overthinking Cure. Last time, we explored how putting your thoughts on paper can help untangle those persistent mental loops.
That's right, Alex. Journaling is fantastic for unpacking what's going on in our heads and for planning. But today, we're taking that planning and turning it into something even more powerful: action. We're introducing a concept called action bias.
Exactly, Lisa. It sounds a little counterintuitive, doesn't it? When we overthink, we often feel like we need to think ourselves out of it, to analyze every single possibility until we reach the perfect solution. But sometimes, the most effective thing we can do is simply act.
So, action bias means deliberately choosing to take some action rather than getting stuck in endless deliberation.
Precisely. Think of it like this. When you're trying to warm up a cold room, do you stand there for hours debating the best way to ignite a fire, or do you grab a match and light a small piece of kindling? The latter gets the job done, even if it's just the beginning. Overthinking often leads to a state of paralysis, where we're so busy thinking about what might be the best action that we end up taking no action at all.
That paralysis. I know it well. It feels like being stuck in mud, weighing down every limb.
And that's where action bias comes in as our antidote. It's about overcoming that indecisiveness that often accompanies rumination. We're going to explore how to break down tasks, set tiny initial goals, and celebrate those crucial small wins. This is where our journaling from episode 6 directly feeds into today's topic. You've journaled about your problem, you've brainstormed some potential actions. Now it's time to do one of them.
So, if I've journaled about a big project I'm procrastinating on, and I've written down a few steps I could take, action bias tells me to just pick one, no matter how small, and do it.
You've got it. Even the smallest step can create momentum. Let's say you need to write a report. Overthinking might lead you to stress about the perfect opening sentence, the exact data points to include, or the overall structure. You might spend hours just staring at a blank page.
Oh, the dreaded blank page.
Indeed. But with action bias, you could say, okay, for the next 5 minutes, I'm just going to open the document and write down 3 bullet points of ideas. Or I'm going to find one relevant statistic. That's a small, manageable action. And once you've done it, something interesting happens.
What happens?
You've broken the spell of non-action. You've shifted from a passive state of thinking to an active state of doing. Often, That small action can unlock further ideas or give you the confidence to take the next small step. It's like pushing a heavy boulder. It's incredibly difficult to get it moving from a standstill. But once it has a little momentum, it's much easier to keep it rolling.
That's a great analogy, Alex. The initial push is the hardest part.
Absolutely. And the key to activating your action bias is making those initial steps incredibly small and achievable. We call these micro actions. They're so small, they barely feel like effort. For example, if you're overwhelmed by cleaning your house, a micro action could be putting just one item back in its place, or wiping down one surface.
So, instead of thinking, I have to clean the whole kitchen, which feels insurmountable, I could think, I'm going to put this mug in the dishwasher.
Exactly. And then you might feel a little nudge to put another item in. Or you might feel satisfied with that one small accomplishment and decide to take a short break before tackling another micro action. The goal isn't to instantly solve the entire problem, but to disrupt the cycle of overthinking and build a little bit of momentum.
This really combats that feeling of being overwhelmed. When we overthink, we tend to catastrophize, seeing the worst case scenario or the impossible task. These micro actions bring us back to reality.
They absolutely do. And it links back to our journaling practice. After you've brainstormed in your journal, you can then identify a specific micro action to take. For instance, if you journaled about wanting to improve your physical fitness, a micro action might be put on my workout clothes. That's it, just putting on the clothes. It's not about exercising for an hour. It's about taking that first tiny step.
And then, once I'm in my workout clothes, I might feel more inclined to do a 5-minute stretch or walk around the block.
Precisely. You're creating a pathway for action. You're making it easier for your future self to follow through. It's about lowering the barrier to entry for taking action so that overthinking doesn't have a chance to get in the way. This also helps us confront decision fatigue, which we talked about in episode 5. When you're faced with too many choices, it's easy to get stuck. Action bias simplifies things by telling you, just pick a choice and act on it.
So, if I'm trying to decide between two different healthy meals for dinner and I'm stuck in analysis paralysis, action bias would suggest just picking one, maybe the one with fewer ingredients, and preparing that. Even if the other might have been slightly better in some hypothetical way, the act of preparing a meal is the win.
You've nailed it. It's about progress, not perfection. And this brings us to another crucial element, celebrating small wins. When you successfully complete a micro action, acknowledge it. Give yourself a mental pat on the back. This positive reinforcement is incredibly powerful.
So, I put my mug in the dishwasher. I can think, great, one thing is done.
Exactly. Don't dismiss it as too small. Every completed micro action is a victory against overthinking. It's proof that you can take action, that you can move forward. This builds confidence and makes it easier to tackle the next micro action and the one after that. Over time, these small wins accumulate and can lead to significant progress.
It's like building a habit. If you consistently take tiny actions, they eventually become a natural part of your routine.
That's a wonderful way to look at it, Lisa. We're building positive momentum by starting small. It's about shifting our mindset from, I need to figure everything out perfectly before I start, to what is one tiny thing I can do right now to move forward.
And this is so important for tasks that feel overwhelming, like starting a new business, writing a book, or even just organizing a cluttered closet. The sheer scale of these tasks can trigger our overthinking.
Absolutely. And the beauty of action bias is that it's applicable to almost any situation where you find yourself stuck in your head. It's a practical tool that empowers you to break free from the cycle of rumination and procrastination. We're not saying we should never think or plan. Prudent planning is essential. But when thinking turns into endless, unproductive loops, it's time to flip the switch and engage our action bias.
So, to recap, action bias is the strategic decision to take any action, particularly a small, manageable one, to overcome the paralysis of overthinking. We break down overwhelming tasks into microactions, take that first tiny step, and then acknowledge that small win to build momentum.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. It's about creating forward motion by making the entry point into action incredibly low. It combats indecisiveness, reduces the feeling of being overwhelmed, and builds confidence through small, consistent victories. Remember that journaling we did? That's your roadmap. Identify a micro action and then act on it.
So, moving from thought to deed by starting small. Fantastic. It makes big goals feel much more approachable.
It really does. Next, we'll be exploring the liberation of imperfection and how embracing good enough can be a powerful antidote to perfectionism, another common driver of overthinking.
Embracing good enough. That sounds like a relief already. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Overthinking Cure. Last time, we talked about activating your action bias, moving from endless thinking to actual doing. Today, we're tackling a major roadblock that often stops us from activating that bias: perfectionism.
Perfectionism. That elusive mountain we often try to scale, only to find ourselves exhausted and stuck. For so many overthinkers, the pursuit of perfection is a never-ending loop. We're so afraid of making a mistake, of not doing something flawlessly, that we end up doing nothing at all.
Exactly, Lisa. Perfectionism isn't just about wanting things to be good. It's about needing them to be flawless, to be absolutely perfect. And that standard? It's almost always unattainable. Imagine trying to build a house, but you can't lay a single brick until you've designed every molecule of mortar, every grain of sand. You'd never even start, would you?
Never. And that's a great analogy for what happens with our thoughts. We get caught up in the what ifs, the endless revisions, the fear of judgment. We believe that if it's not perfect, it's not worth anything. But today, we're here to introduce a powerful antidote: embracing good enough.
The concept of good enough can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've lived with perfectionist tendencies for a long time. It implies imperfection, and that can be a scary thought. But let's reframe it. Good enough isn't about settling for mediocrity. It's about recognizing when a task is complete, when it meets the necessary standard, and when further effort is yielding diminishing returns or even causing harm.
That's a key distinction. It's not laziness, it's strategic completion. Think about a report for work. Your perfectionist brain might tell you to spend another 3 days refining every sentence, polishing every graph. But if the report clearly communicates the essential information, if it meets the deadline and satisfies the core requirements, then it is good enough. Those extra 3 days might be better spent on a new project or simply resting.
And this directly ties back to our previous discussion on action bias. Perfectionism is a direct enemy of action. It whispers, wait until you're perfectly ready, or you can't start until you have the perfect plan. Embracing good enough means silencing that whisper and taking that first step, even if it's not a flawless leap. It allows us to initiate, to experiment, and to learn through doing.
So, how do we begin to cultivate this good enough mindset? What are the practical steps?
A great starting point is to become aware of your perfectionist triggers. When do you find yourself getting stuck? Is it when you're starting a new task? When you're facing a deadline? When you're preparing for a presentation? Identifying these moments is the first step to challenging them.
And once we've identified a trigger, what do?
We practice conscious self-compassion. Instead of beating yourself up for not being perfect, acknowledge that you're human and that striving for impossible standards is exhausting. Tell yourself, it's okay that this isn't perfect. It's good enough for now. I'm proud of myself for getting this far. This compassionate inner dialogue is crucial.
That sounds so much kinder than the inner critic many of us are used to. So, awareness, then self-compassion. What else?
We need to set realistic goals and expectations. Often, perfectionists set the bar impossibly high from the outset. Try setting smaller, achievable goals for a task. For example, instead of aiming to write a perfect essay, aim to outline the main arguments in one sitting. Or, if you're working on a project, aim to get a basic function working rather than a perfectly optimized one. Break down what good enough looks like for each step.
So, define good enough before you even start. That makes sense. It gives you a tangible target to hit rather than an abstract, unattainable ideal.
Precisely. And tied to that is the concept of iterative progress. Think of it like sculpting. You remove a little clay, you shape it, you step back, you look, and then you remove a little more. You don't expect the perfect statue to emerge in one go. Each small step brings you closer. This applies to almost any task. Get a version 1 out, a version 2, a version 3. Each iteration improves it, but version 1 might still be perfectly acceptable.
I love that visual of sculpting. It makes the process seem less daunting and more like a natural evolution. And it reinforces that idea of progress over perfection.
Exactly. We also need to challenge the underlying fear that drives perfectionism. Often, it's a fear of failure, a fear of criticism, or a fear of not being good enough as a person. By embracing good enough, we begin to decouple our self-worth from flawless performance. We learn that our value isn't diminished by an imperfect outcome.
This is so important because when we're attached to perfection, every small flaw feels like a personal failing. It's like saying, if this report has one typo, then I am a failure. But that's a false equation.
It absolutely is. Another technique that helps is to practice minimum viable effort. What is the absolute minimum effort required to achieve the desired outcome? Sometimes that minimum effort is genuinely enough. It might be a simple email, a quick spoken confirmation, or a basic outline.
Minimum viable effort. I like that. It's a very concrete way to think about what's truly necessary. Instead of asking, how can I make this perfect? You ask, what's the absolute least I can do to achieve the fundamental goal?
Right? And this connects to understanding the true purpose of a task. If the purpose is to share information, then clear communication is the goal, not necessarily literary brilliance. If the purpose is to get feedback, then a draft that prompts useful comments is good enough. We need to ask ourselves, what is the actual outcome I need, and what level of effort will achieve that outcome efficiently?
This episode is really about shifting our focus. Instead of focusing on the impossible ideal of perfection, we're focusing on effectiveness, on progress, and on completion.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. Embracing good enough is about making peace with imperfection. It's about recognizing that done is often better than perfect. It frees up our mental energy from endless rumination and allows us to dedicate it to new ideas, new projects, and simply to living. It's about valuing progress over pristine outcomes and learning from the process rather than being paralyzed by it.
And by embracing good enough, we become more able to act, to try new things, and to ultimately achieve more, even if it's not always with flawless execution. It's a more sustainable, more compassionate, and frankly, more productive way to approach our lives and our work.
So, for our listeners, I encourage you to identify one area this week where perfectionism is holding you back. Set a realistic, good enough standard for it, and then take action. Give yourself permission to be imperfect and see what happens. You might be surprised by how much more you can accomplish.
Remember, the goal isn't to eliminate effort or to stop caring about quality. It's to recognize the point of diminishing returns and to celebrate the completion of a task rather than getting lost in the infinite pursuit of an unattainable ideal.
Absolutely. So, to recap, perfectionism, the relentless pursuit of flawlessness, is a major trigger for overthinking and paralysis. The antidote is embracing good enough. This means becoming aware of your perfectionist triggers, practicing self-compassion, setting realistic goals, and understanding that done is often better than perfect. It's about efficiency, progress, and valuing your effort.
And this directly helps us activate our action bias, allowing us to move forward rather than getting stuck in endless loops of thought.
That's right. Next episode, mind-body connection, calming the physical manifestations of overthinking. Welcome back. Last time we covered embracing good enough. Now let's tackle the mind-body connection.
That was a really powerful concept, Alex. It's so easy to get caught in the trap of thinking one more tweak will make things perfect, but often it just leads to more overthinking.
Exactly, Lisa. And today, we're diving into a topic that directly impacts how we feel when we're overthinking. We're going to explore the mind-body connection, how our thoughts, especially those spiraling, anxious thoughts, show up physically in our bodies, and importantly, how we can calm those physical manifestations.
Oh, this is so relevant. I know for me, when my mind is racing, my shoulders tense up, my stomach feels like a knot, and I can even feel a tremor in my hands. It's like my whole body is mirroring my mental state.
You've hit on a crucial point. Our minds and bodies are not separate entities. They're deeply interconnected. When we're experiencing mental stress from overthinking, our nervous system kicks into overdrive. Think of it like your body's alarm system going off. This is often called the fight or flight response, even when there's no real physical danger.
So, those physical feelings, the tense muscles, the racing heart, the shallow breathing, are actually the body preparing us to deal with a perceived threat, even if that threat is just a worry about a future event or a past mistake.
Precisely. And the longer we stay in that state of heightened alert, the more it impacts our physical well-being. Chronic stress from overthinking can lead to headaches, digestive issues, fatigue, and even a more weakened immune system over time. It's a vicious cycle. Overthinking causes physical tension, and that physical tension can then fuel more anxious thoughts.
It makes so much sense when you put it like that. So, the goal today is to find ways to break that cycle and bring our bodies back to a state of calm. Where do we start?
We'll start by revisiting a technique we touched on earlier, grounding. Remember when we discussed how grounding anchors us in the present moment? This is a perfect example of putting that into practice. When your mind is racing, bringing your attention to your physical sensations can be incredibly effective.
Right? Grounding by focusing on what you can see, hear, smell, taste, and touch. That helps pull us out of the mental loop.
Exactly. And we can extend that to more active techniques specifically designed to release physical tension. One powerful method is progressive muscle relaxation. Have you ever tried that, Lisa?
I've heard of it, but I haven't really practiced it consistently. How does it work?
It's quite simple, yet incredibly effective. The idea is to systematically tense and then release different muscle groups in your body. You start with your toes, for instance. You curl them tightly for about 5 to 10 seconds, really feeling the tension. Then you consciously release that tension, allowing your toes to become completely limp. You should notice a difference, a sense of relaxation in that released muscle group.
So, you intentionally create tension to better appreciate the relaxation?
That's the beauty of it. You bring your awareness to the sensation of tension, and then you intentionally let it go. You then move up your body, tensing and releasing your calves, your thighs, your buttocks, your abdomen, your chest, your arms, your hands, your neck, and your face. Each time, you focus on the contrast between the tension and the subsequent release.
That sounds like it would take some time, but also like it would be very mindful. You have to really pay attention to each part of your body.
It does take some time, but even just 5 or 10 minutes can make a significant difference. And you're right, it's an intensely mindful practice. It forces you to disconnect from your racing thoughts and connect with your physical self. You become acutely aware of where you hold tension, often in places you didn't even realize.
So, by consciously tensing and then releasing, we're essentially teaching our bodies to let go of that stored stress. We're sending a signal that it's okay to relax.
Precisely. And this ties directly into the importance of self-awareness we discussed. By practicing progressive muscle relaxation, you learn to recognize the feeling of tension in different parts of your body. This means that in your daily life, when you start to feel those familiar knots forming in your shoulders, you might be able to consciously release them before they become overwhelming.
That's a fantastic point. Before, I might not have even recognized that tension until it was quite severe. Now, I can potentially catch it earlier.
Exactly. Another powerful tool is mindful movement. This isn't about strenuous exercise, but rather about bringing a non-judgmental awareness to gentle physical activity. Think of practices like mindful walking, gentle stretching, or even yoga. The key is to focus on the sensations in your body as you move.
So, instead of just going through the motions, you're really feeling your body as it moves?
Yes, when you're mindfully walking, you pay attention to the feeling of your feet hitting the ground, the swing of your arms, the air on your skin, the rhythm of your breath. You observe these sensations without judgment. When your mind drifts back into overthinking, you gently guide your attention back to the physical experience.
And this reinforces the grounding we talked about. It keeps us tethered to the present physical reality.
Absolutely. Mindful movement helps to release stored energy and tension in a gentle way. It also promotes a sense of connection between your mind and your body, which is often fractured when we're overthinking. Sometimes, just a few minutes of mindful stretching can help to loosen tight muscles and calm a restless mind.
It sounds like a proactive way to manage that physical fallout from anxious thoughts.
It really is. And then there's mindful eating. This might seem a little removed from physical tension, but it's another way for our bodies to process stress and regain balance. Overthinking can often lead us to eat distractedly, perhaps eating too quickly, too much, or reaching for comfort foods without really savoring them.
I'm definitely guilty of that. Eating in front of the TV, scrolling through my phone, and barely noticing what I'm actually tasting.
Mindful eating is the opposite. It encourages you to slow down, engage all your senses, and truly appreciate your food. Notice the colors, the smells, the textures, the flavors. Pay attention to the feeling of hunger and satiety. By bringing this focused attention to eating, you're practicing a form of mindfulness that calms the nervous system.
So, it's about treating eating as a deliberate, present moment activity rather than just fuel or a distraction.
Precisely. And when we approach eating mindfully, we're less likely to use it as a coping mechanism for stress and more likely to nourish our bodies properly. This, in turn, supports our overall physical and mental well-being. When our bodies feel nourished and cared for, they are better equipped to handle stress.
This is all so interconnected. We're talking about calming the physical symptoms of overthinking, and these techniques, progressive muscle relaxation, mindful movement, and mindful eating, all seem to work by bringing us back into our bodies, into the present moment, and by releasing that stored physical tension.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. We're essentially retraining our nervous system. When overthinking sends out those signals of alarm, these practices provide a counterbalance, signaling safety and relaxation. It's about actively soothing your nervous system.
And by calming the physical manifestations, we're also making it harder for the overthinking spiral to maintain its momentum. When the body is tense and agitated, it's so much easier to get caught up in anxious thoughts. But when the body is relaxed, a more calm and rational mind can often follow.
You've got it. Remember those grounding techniques? These are extensions of that principle. They help you reconnect with your physical self, which is always in the present moment, even when your mind is caught in the past or future. The mind-body connection is powerful, and by tending to the body's needs, we can significantly reduce the impact of overthinking.
So, to recap for our listeners, overthinking isn't just a mental issue, it has very real physical symptoms that can create a feedback loop of anxiety. Techniques like progressive muscle relaxation, which involves tensing and releasing muscle groups, help to consciously let go of tension. Mindful movement, like gentle stretching or walking, brings awareness to the body's sensations and releases stored energy. And mindful eating helps us reconnect with our bodies through nourishment. All these practices help to calm the nervous system and anchor us in the present.
Excellent recap, Lisa. These are practical, actionable steps you can start incorporating today to ease the physical burden of overthinking and foster a greater sense of peace.
I'm looking forward to our next topic.
Next episode, challenging your narratives, the stories you tell yourself. Welcome back. Last time we explored the crucial connection between our bodies and our minds, learning how to calm the physical symptoms of overthinking.
It was so practical, Alex. Understanding how anxiety can manifest physically really helped me see that overthinking isn't just happening in my head. And now we're diving even deeper, aren't we? This episode is all about the stories we tell ourselves.
Exactly, Lisa. We're going to talk about challenging your narratives, those deeply held stories, beliefs, and assumptions that often fuel our spirals of overthinking. Think of them as the foundational myths we've built about ourselves and the world around us.
Foundational myths. That sounds powerful. And maybe a little scary. Are we talking about things like, I'm not good enough, or they don't like me?
You've hit the nail on the head, Lisa. Those are perfect examples. These aren't just fleeting thoughts. They're often ingrained beliefs that shape how we interpret events, make decisions, and even how we feel about ourselves. They become our default operating system.
So, if overthinking is the spiral and our triggers are the starting point, then these narratives are the deep grooves that the spiral keeps falling back into?
That's a brilliant analogy, Lisa. They are indeed the grooves. And sometimes we don't even realize we're following them because they feel so familiar, so true. We've told ourselves these stories for so long, we accept them as facts.
But they're not facts. They're stories. And like any story, they can be rewritten.
Precisely. And that's what we'll focus on today. Identifying these core narratives and then learning how to challenge them. Just like we practiced with cognitive reframing in a previous episode, but now we're going deeper.
I remember how we learned to recognize unhelpful thought patterns and question them. So, this is like an advanced version for our core beliefs?
Yes, when we talk about narratives, we're looking at beliefs that are more fundamental, more deeply embedded. Think about, I'm not good enough. This isn't just a thought about one specific situation. It's a pervasive belief about your worth. Or, the world is a dangerous place, which can lead to constant vigilance and worry.
Okay, so how do we even begin to identify these foundational myths? It feels like trying to see the water you're swimming in.
That's a common feeling. The first step is self-awareness, as we've emphasized throughout this series. You can start by asking yourself some probing questions when you notice you're stuck in a negative thought loop. For instance, what is the underlying fear here? What does this situation really mean about me or my future? What am I assuming to be true that I don't actually have proof for?
So, if I'm constantly worrying about disappointing someone, what's the narrative behind that? Is it I must be perfect to be loved?
Potentially. Or perhaps if I make a mistake, people will reject me. Or even, my value is tied to pleasing others. See how these are deeper statements about your worth and your relationships? They're not just about a single action.
It makes sense. I can definitely see how those core beliefs would keep you spiraling. If you believe you have to be perfect, then any small slip up triggers massive anxiety, and you overthink every single detail to avoid that imperfection.
Exactly. And the narrative often comes with emotional baggage. It's tied to feelings of shame, inadequacy, or fear. So, when we identify a narrative like, I'm not smart enough, it's not just an intellectual statement. It carries a heavy emotional weight.
Once we've identified a narrative, what's the next step? How do we actually challenge it? It feels so ingrained.
This is where we actively engage in challenging its validity. We can look for evidence that contradicts the narrative. For the narrative, I'm not good enough. What evidence do you have that you are good enough? Think about your accomplishments, your skills, the positive feedback you've received, times you've overcome challenges.
Right. So, actively gather counter evidence. It's like being a detective for your own life.
A detective for the truth. And remember, these narratives often come in the form of generalizations. I always mess things up. Is that really true? Have you always messed things up? Or are there times, perhaps many times, when things have gone smoothly or even exceptionally well?
That's a great point about always and never. Those are huge red flags for a narrative that's likely not entirely true.
They are. Another powerful technique is to consider the origin of the narrative. Where did this story come from? Was it something you were told as a child? Was it a painful experience from your past? Understanding the origin can help us depersonalize it slightly and see it as something adopted rather than an inherent truth about ourselves.
So, it might not even be my story in the first place. It could be a story I inherited or absorbed.
Precisely. And once you see it as something adopted, you gain the power to discard it. You can ask yourself, is this narrative serving me? Is it helping me live a fulfilling life? Or is it holding me back and fueling my overthinking?
And the answer is usually that it's holding us back. Otherwise, we wouldn't be so driven to cure overthinking.
Exactly. So, once we've gathered evidence and questioned its utility, we can begin to consciously curate a new narrative. This is where we intentionally create and reinforce a more balanced, realistic, and empowering story about ourselves.
So, if the old narrative was, I'm not good enough, the new one might be, I am capable and constantly learning.
That's a fantastic example. Or, I am worthy of love and respect, regardless of perfection. The key is that it's a positive affirmation, but importantly, it also feels believable to you. It's not about creating a fantasy. It's about creating a reality that is more aligned with your true self and your potential.
It feels like this is where the journaling we discussed earlier becomes invaluable. Writing down the old narrative, the evidence against it, and then crafting the new one.
Absolutely. Journaling provides that tangible space to unpack these deep-seated beliefs. And repetition is key. Just as you reinforce the old narrative over time, you need to consistently reinforce the new one. This can involve affirmations, consciously reminding yourself of your new narrative when old thoughts creep in, or even visual reminders.
Reminders like what?
It could be a sticky note with your new narrative on your mirror. It could be a screensaver, or it could be consciously bringing your new narrative to mind when you're faced with a situation that used to trigger the old one. For example, if your old narrative was about not being liked and you go to a social gathering, instead of worrying about what people think, you consciously tell yourself, I am confident and can connect with people.
It sounds like an active, ongoing process of self correction and self creation.
It truly is. And it's important to acknowledge that this isn't always easy. Our brains are wired for efficiency, and old patterns are often the path of least resistance. There will be times when the old narrative feels stronger, and that's okay. That's why we revisit these ideas. That's why we keep practicing.
So, even if the old story pops up, it doesn't mean we're failing at this. It's an opportunity to apply the new narrative.
Exactly. It's feedback. It's a cue to engage the tools we're developing. And by consistently challenging those old limiting stories, we begin to shift our internal landscape. We create new neural pathways, essentially.
New neural pathways, that's the physical manifestation of retraining our brains. It reminds me of how we discussed the mind body connection. This is like the mind's version of exercise.
Well said. And the outcome is profound. When you challenge your narratives, you reduce the fuel for overthinking. You reduce the automatic assumptions that lead to catastrophic thinking. You begin to see situations more clearly, without the distortion of these old, unhelpful stories.
So, to recap for our listeners, first, we become aware of our core narratives, the fundamental beliefs that often run on autopilot and feed our overthinking.
Then, we act like detectives, gathering evidence that contradicts these narratives. We question their origins and their usefulness in our lives.
And finally, we actively and consciously create and reinforce new, empowering narratives, weaving them into our daily experience to replace the old ones.
That's the power of challenging your narratives. It's about taking control of the stories that shape your reality, and in doing so, taking control of your thoughts.
This is such a crucial step. It feels like the final piece of the puzzle for really getting to the root of ingrained overthinking patterns. And it ties back so well to cognitive reframing.
It absolutely does. We've covered so much ground in identifying the spirals, understanding triggers, grounding ourselves, reframing thoughts, making decisions, journaling, taking action, embracing good enough, connecting mind and body, and now, challenging our deep down stories.
It's amazing how interconnected all these tools are.
And the journey isn't over yet. Next episode, mindfulness beyond breathing, cultivating a non-judgmental awareness. Welcome back to the Overthinking Cure. We've discussed challenging the narratives we tell ourselves, those stories that can often fuel our overthinking spirals. Today, we're taking our mindfulness practice to a whole new level. We've touched on mindfulness before, particularly in relation to grounding ourselves in the present. But now, we're going to expand mindfulness beyond just the breath, focusing on cultivating a truly non-judgmental awareness.
That sounds like a significant step, Alex. So, if we're not just focusing on our breath, what does mindfulness beyond breathing actually involve? I'm curious how we can be mindful of more than just our inhale and exhale.
Great question, Lisa. Think of it this way. So far, we've used the breath as a very effective anchor. It's a consistent physical sensation that we can return to. But the goal of mindfulness, especially when we're trying to cure overthinking, is to expand that awareness to encompass everything we experience. Our thoughts, our emotions, our physical sensations, and even the external environment. And crucially, to do this without judging them.
Without judging them. That's the tricky part for many of us, myself included. We tend to label our thoughts as good or bad, productive or useless.
Exactly. And that's where the non-judgmental aspect becomes so powerful. When we overthink, we often get caught in a loop because we're attached to a particular thought or emotion. We might be judging ourselves for having a certain thought or desperately trying to push away an uncomfortable feeling, which ironically makes it stronger. Non-judgmental awareness is about observing these internal experiences as if you were a neutral scientist studying phenomena.
A neutral scientist. I like that analogy. So, instead of thinking, oh no, I'm having this anxious thought, I'm terrible, it would be more like, ah, an anxious thought has arrived. Interesting.
Precisely. You see it, you acknowledge it, but you don't get entangled. You recognize that thoughts are just mental events. They arise, they exist for a period, and then they pass. They aren't necessarily facts, and they certainly don't define who you are. This connects directly to what we discussed in episode 10 about challenging your narratives. When you can observe a narrative arising without immediately believing it or judging yourself for it, you gain immense power over it.
So, how do we actually practice this non-judgmental observation? It sounds easier said than done. My mind immediately wants to analyze or critique the thought.
It absolutely is a practice, and it takes time. One very effective technique is called labeling. When you notice a thought or feeling arise, you silently label it. For example, if you're worrying about a future event, you might simply label it worrying. If you notice a physical sensation like tension in your shoulders, you label it tension. If you find yourself reminiscing about the past, you label it remembering.
Labeling. That sounds simple enough. So, I just think the word that describes what's happening?
That's the core of it. The key is to do it with a sense of curiosity and detachment, not like you're critiquing or diagnosing yourself. It's like putting a gentle, descriptive tag on your experience. Thought about work. A feeling of sadness. This simple act of labeling helps create a small space between you and the thought or emotion. It interrupts the automatic identification with it.
I can see how that would create distance. When I label it, it feels less like me and more like something that's just happening in my head.
Exactly. It shifts your identity from being the thought to observing the thought. And this observation is inherently non-judgmental when done with the right intention. You're not trying to change the thought, banish it, or deem it bad. You're simply acknowledging its presence. Imagine a clear sky. Clouds come and go. You don't get angry at the clouds for appearing. You don't try to push them away. You just notice them as part of the ever-changing sky.
That's a beautiful metaphor, Alex. The sky as our consciousness, and our thoughts as the clouds. So, the practice is to notice the clouds, label them, and then let them drift by without attaching to them or judging the weather they might bring.
You've got it. And it's important to remember that overthinking often involves a strong emotional component. We might feel shame, frustration, or anxiety about our own thought patterns. Non-judgmental awareness extends to these meta-emotions as well. If you notice yourself feeling frustrated about your tendency to overthink, you can label that too, frustration about overthinking. It might sound a bit meta, but it's incredibly effective at disarming the frustration itself.
That's a really powerful concept. It's like turning the lens of non-judgment onto the very act of judging our thoughts. It feels like it could break a cycle of self-criticism that often accompanies overthinking.
It absolutely can. Another aspect of this practice is recognizing the transient nature of all mental and emotional states. Nothing lasts forever. An intense feeling of anxiety will eventually subside. A worrisome thought will eventually pass. When we fully accept this impermanence, we become less afraid of uncomfortable experiences. We don't need to fight them or desperately cling to pleasant ones.
So, instead of resisting an uncomfortable feeling, we acknowledge it, observe it, and trust that it will naturally move on, just like a wave receding from the shore.
Precisely. This acceptance is not resignation. It's a profound understanding of how our minds work. It's about working with your internal experience rather than constantly fighting against it. This non-judgmental, observational stance is what allows us to regain control. When you're not caught up in judgment, you have the clarity and space to choose a different response.
Can you give us another practical example of how to apply this in a common overthinking scenario? Say, if I'm continually replaying a past social interaction and criticizing myself for something I said.
Certainly. So, you're caught in that loop, replaying the conversation. Notice it. The first step is simply recognizing, I'm replaying a past conversation and criticizing myself. That's your label. Then, you observe the thoughts that come up. I sounded so stupid. Why did I say that? Instead of diving into the criticism, you acknowledge self-criticism, regretful thought. You might even notice physical sensations. Is your jaw clenched? Are your shoulders tight? You can label those too. Jaw tension, shoulder tightness.
And then I just watch them, without trying to stop the self-criticism or wishing the tension away.
Exactly. You watch the thoughts and sensations without engaging with their content or judging yourself for having them. You see them as fleeting. The self-criticism might feel powerful, but it's just a thought. The regretful thought is just a memory colored by emotion. The tension is just a physical sensation in your body. By observing them without judgment, you diminish their grip. You create space for a different perspective to emerge, perhaps realizing that what you said wasn't that bad after all, or that it doesn't define you.
This is incredibly empowering. It feels like we're learning to surf the waves of our thoughts and emotions rather than being capsized by them.
That's an excellent way to put it. And the more you practice this, the more automatic it becomes. Over time, you strengthen your ability to disengage from spiraling thoughts before they gain momentum. You build resilience. It's like developing a muscle. Every time you notice yourself overthinking, you have an opportunity to choose observation over entanglement.
So, to recap what we've covered today, we're deepening our mindfulness practice beyond just the breath. We're cultivating non judgmental awareness, observing our thoughts, emotions, and sensations without labeling them as good or bad. We learned the technique of labeling, simply describing what's happening in our minds, like worrying or tension. We're embracing the transient nature of all experiences, like clouds in the sky or waves on the shore. We see this practice as a way to create space and regain control, much like a neutral scientist observing phenomena.
Beautifully summarized, Lisa. This practice of non-judgmental awareness is a cornerstone in overcoming overthinking. It allows us to see our thought patterns with clarity and compassion, rather than getting lost in them. It's about truly understanding that you're not your thoughts.
It feels like this is directly building on our work from episode 10, challenging those narratives. By observing them non judgmentally, we can more easily see them for what they are, just stories.
Absolutely. This leads us perfectly into our next episode, where we'll tackle the real-world test, applying these powerful skills in high-pressure situations. How do we maintain this calm, non-judgmental awareness when the stakes feel high? Next episode, applying skills in high-pressure situations, the real-world test. Welcome back. This is episode 12, focusing on applying our skills when the pressure is truly on.
Exactly, Alex. It's one thing to practice grounding when you're calm. It's another to do it during a major presentation or a difficult decision. This is the real world test.
It absolutely is. We've talked about so many tools, identifying triggers, grounding, reframing thoughts, battling decision fatigue, journaling, activating your action bias, embracing good enough, connecting mind and body, challenging your narratives, and practicing mindfulness. That's a whole toolkit. But in a high pressure moment, your brain might just default to old, overthinking habits.
So, how do we make these tools accessible when we need them most, when our cognitive resources are stretched thin?
The first thing to remember is that these tools become more effective with practice. We've said this before. The more you consciously practice grounding, the more automatic it becomes. The more you challenge negative narratives, the more readily you'll spot them when they try to sneak in. Think of it like learning any skill. You build muscle memory over time.
Right. So, when you're in a high pressure situation and you feel that familiar tightness, that urge to ruminate, what's the first thing you can try?
The immediate anchor, Lisa, is always grounding. Even a quick grounding exercise can pull you out of your head and back into your body, back into the present moment. This is our work from episode 3. Remember that quick 5-finger exercise? Or simply focusing on your breath for a few conscious inhales and exhales?
Ah, yes, the 5 finger exercise. You focus on one finger, notice its texture or color, and then move to the next. It pulls your attention away from swirling thoughts and onto something tangible, something real.
Precisely. We're just noticing the feeling of your feet on the floor, the sensation of your clothes against your skin. These aren't elaborate rituals. They're quick resets. When you're feeling overwhelmed, your nervous system is likely in fight or flight mode. Grounding signals to your brain and body that you are safe, right here, right now. It interrupts the panic.
Okay, grounding is the first line of defense. What comes next if the thoughts are still racing, or if you're stuck in a loop of what ifs?
That's where cognitive reframing comes in from episode 4. This is powerful in high pressure moments because it helps you directly challenge unhelpful thought patterns. Instead of letting catastrophic thoughts run wild, you ask yourself, is this thought actually true? What's another way of looking at this? What's the most likely outcome? Not just the worst case scenario.
So, if I'm about to present and I'm thinking, I'm going to mess up, everyone will see I'm not qualified. Reframing would be to ask, what evidence do I have that I am qualified? What if I focus on the value I'm bringing instead of potential mistakes?
Exactly. And it's not about ignoring the possibility of mistakes, but about putting them in perspective. It's about shifting from a deficit mindset to a more balanced one. And this ties directly into challenging your narratives, which we explored in episode 10. High pressure situations often bring our deepest, most ingrained narratives to the surface. The one that says you're not good enough, or you always fail when it counts. Reframing is your tool to actively counter those stories.
And that can feel really hard when you're stressed. It's like trying to push against a strong current.
It is, which is why we're also going to bring in a concept we discussed in episode 7, your action bias. This is a crucial lifeboat in high pressure situations, especially when decisions feel overwhelming. Remember how we talked about how sometimes the act of doing something, even if it's not perfect, is better than being paralyzed by an action?
Oh, yes. The idea that if you're stuck, pick a direction and move. It might not be the absolute perfect path, but it gets you moving and often provides new information or clarity.
In high pressure scenarios, especially those involving decision making, this is golden. When you're facing decision fatigue, as we discussed in episode 5, and the choices feel monumental, action bias can be a lifesaver. Instead of getting caught in an endless loop of weighing pros and cons, you can choose to take a small, concrete step. This action itself can be a form of grounding and can help you regain a sense of control.
So, if I'm faced with a complex work project with multiple forks in the road, and I'm paralyzed by which path to choose, action bias suggests picking one of those paths, even if it's just starting the initial research for that path, or outlining a small part of it.
Precisely. It's about breaking down the overwhelming task into a manageable first step. And this is where embracing good enough from episode 8 becomes incredibly valuable. In high pressure situations, perfectionism can be a major trap of overthinking. The drive to make everything absolutely flawless can lead to paralysis or endless tweaking.
When the stakes are high, the desire to be perfect can become even stronger. It feels like one mistake could ruin everything.
And that's a narrative we need to challenge. Embracing good enough means understanding that in many high pressure scenarios, progress is more important than perfection. Completing a task competently, even if it's not a masterpiece, is often far better than not completing it at all. It's about setting realistic expectations for yourself in demanding circumstances.
It sounds like there's a core theme here, breaking down the overwhelm. Whether it's through grounding, taking one small action, or accepting a less than perfect outcome.
Absolutely. And the mind-body connection we discussed in episode 9 is also vital here. When you're under pressure, your physical sensations can amplify your anxious thoughts. Noticing your tense shoulders, shallow breathing, or racing heart isn't just a symptom of stress. It's feedback. Using techniques to calm your physical response, deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, even a short walk, can directly impact your mental state.
It reinforces that these aren't separate issues. Calming the physical can calm the mental, and vice versa.
Exactly. And this brings us to mindfulness, the bedrock of many of these skills. In episode 11, we talked about mindfulness beyond just breathing. It's about cultivating a non-judgmental awareness of your thoughts and feelings. When you're in a high-pressure situation, this non-judgmental awareness allows you to observe your anxiety, your fear, your urge to overthink, without immediately getting swept away by them.
So, instead of thinking, oh no, I'm panicking, this is terrible, you can observe, okay, I'm noticing a feeling of panic rising. My heart is racing. That's a physical response to pressure.
Yes, it creates a little bit of space between you and the emotion. This space is where your ability to choose your response, rather than react impulsively, resides. You can then apply your other tools, like reframing or action bias, from that place of awareness.
It sounds like a layered approach. You start with grounding to get present. Then you might use reframing to adjust your thoughts, perhaps employ action bias to move forward, all while maintaining a mindful awareness of what's happening within you and not letting perfectionism derail you.
That's a fantastic summary. Lisa, it's about having a process, a mental checklist, if you will, that you can fall back on when your overthinking circuits are overloaded. It's vital to remember that even in the most stressful moments, you have agency. You can choose how you respond.
And the more we practice these skills in lower stakes environments, the more readily they'll be available to us when the pressure is truly on. It's about building resilience.
Resilience is the perfect word. We're building the capacity to navigate difficult situations without being consumed by our thoughts. The real world test is ongoing, but with these tools, you are far better equipped to pass.
This has been incredibly helpful, Alex. It bridges the gap between understanding the concepts and actually applying them when it truly matters.
Thank you, Lisa. Next episode, Building Sustainable Habits. Welcome back. Last time, we discussed applying all the skills we've learned to high-pressure moments. Today, we're focusing on making these changes a part of your everyday life.
That's right, Alex. We've covered so much, from understanding triggers and grounding ourselves to reframing thoughts, journaling, and even embracing good enough. It all feels like a lot to keep track of. So, how do we make sure we don't just use these things when we're feeling overwhelmed, but that they become our regular approach?
That's the key question, Lisa. And the answer often boils down to habit formation. Think of it like any other healthy habit, like going to the gym or eating well. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes consistency, a bit of strategic planning, and importantly, self-compassion when things don't go perfectly.
Self compassion is something we've touched on, but I think it bears repeating, especially when building habits. It's easy to get discouraged if you miss a day or fall back into old patterns.
Absolutely. The first crucial step for sustainable habits is integration, not isolation. We don't want these techniques to be separate tasks you have to schedule. We want them to weave into the fabric of your day. For instance, remember our discussion on grounding? Instead of thinking, now I need to do a specific grounding exercise, can you make a conscious effort to notice your surroundings throughout the day?
So it's about making it more automatic, like catching yourself and just taking a few deep breaths and looking around, rather than needing a dedicated 5-minute break to practice grounding.
Precisely. It's about building those small, micro moments of awareness. We can also leverage the power of our environment. If you're trying to journal more, maybe keep your journal and a pen by your bedside or on your kitchen counter where you have your morning coffee. Make it visible and easily accessible. If you're trying to practice mindfulness, perhaps place a small reminder stone on your desk or set a gentle hourly chime on your phone.
That makes so much sense. It's about reducing the friction to doing the desired action. If it's right there, you're more likely to do it.
Exactly. And this brings us to the concept of habit stacking. This is where you link a new habit you want to build with an existing, already established habit. For example, let's say you want to practice a short cognitive reframing exercise each morning. You could stack it after you brush your teeth. So the trigger is brushing your teeth, something you already do, and the habitual action is the reframing exercise. You might say to yourself, after I brush my teeth, I will briefly identify one thought that might be spiraling and ask myself if it's truly serving me.
Oh, I like that. And it's so applicable to what we've learned. So, for someone who wants to do a quick action bias check, Moving from thought to deed, they could stack that after they finish their morning coffee. After I finish my coffee, I will identify one small task I can tackle right now.
Perfect. You're already getting it. It's about creating a logical sequence that makes the new habit feel natural. Now, what about those times when life throws a curveball? We can't always be perfectly consistent. This is where planning for setbacks becomes vital.
This is where the self compassion really comes in, I imagine.
Absolutely. Think of it as an emergency plan for your habits. If you miss your journaling session for a couple of days because you were unexpectedly busy, what's your plan? Is it to immediately beat yourself up and give up? Or is it to acknowledge it and simply pick up where you left off? This is where we need to adjust our expectations. Building a lifestyle isn't about perfection, it's about resilience.
So, instead of saying, I failed because I missed 2 days, we reframe it to, okay, I missed 2 days, but I'm back on track today. What's one small thing I can do right now to re engage?
That's the mindset. And it's also about being realistic with our goals. When starting out, don't aim to meditate for 30 minutes every single day if you've never meditated before. Start with 3 minutes. Make it so achievable that you can't help but succeed. Once that 3-minute habit is solid, then you can gradually increase the duration. This progressive building, which we've used throughout our discussions to explain concepts, is also key to habit formation.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. And we talked about this in our discussion on embracing good enough. This applies not just to our thoughts, but to our habit building process too. A small, imperfect action is infinitely better than no action at all.
Exactly. And to make habits truly sustainable, we need to understand our motivation. Why are you doing this? Are you trying to reduce anxiety, improve your relationships, be more productive? Connecting your habits to your core values and long-term goals provides a powerful anchor. When you're tempted to skip your practice, reminding yourself why you started can be incredibly motivating.
So, it's not just about the what, but the why. Remembering the purpose behind reducing overthinking. It's about gaining peace, clarity, and the freedom to live more fully.
Yes, and don't underestimate the power of accountability, but in a supportive way. Sharing your goals with a trusted friend, family member, or even joining a like-minded community can provide encouragement and gentle nudges. This isn't about external pressure, but about shared commitment. It's like having a workout buddy who helps you stay motivated.
That's a great analogy. It keeps you accountable to yourself and also reminds you that you're not alone in this journey. We've all struggled with overthinking at some point.
Indeed. Now, let's do a quick recap of our habit building strategies. We've talked about integration, weaving techniques into your day, not isolating them. We've explored habit stacking, linking new habits to existing ones. We've discussed planning for setbacks with self-compassion and adjusting expectations. Remember to start small, focus on making it achievable, and gradually increase the challenge.
And we can't forget to connect our habits to our deeper motivation, our why, and to seek supportive accountability when needed. It's about building a resilient system that supports us, even when things get tough.
Exactly. And as we prepare for our final episode, remember that this isn't about achieving a perfect state of non-overthinking. It's about developing a dynamic, ongoing relationship with your thoughts. It's a continuous practice, a lifestyle of mindful awareness and intentional action. The goal isn't to eliminate overthinking entirely, but to manage it effectively so it no longer controls your life. Think of it as a continuous dial you can adjust rather than an on-off switch.
That's such a freeing way to look at it. It's about building resilience and a toolkit that you can draw on throughout your life. And it's built from all the pillars we've discussed in this series. From understanding your triggers, grounded in the present moment, reframing those anxious thoughts, managing decisions, journaling for clarity, taking action, embracing good enough, connecting your mind and body, challenging your narratives, practicing mindful awareness, and applying it all in stressful situations.
You said it perfectly, Lisa. All these pieces come together to create a robust approach, and today we've focused on making that approach a living, breathing part of your lifestyle. It's about turning these powerful tools into ingrained habits.
So, as we move into our final discussion, we'll be bringing all of this together in a grand synthesis. We'll recap the entire journey and look forward to your path ahead with the Overthinking Cure.
Next episode, The Overthinking Cure, a synthesis and your path forward. Welcome back. This is our final episode. We've journeyed through many powerful strategies to help us stop spiraling into overthinking.
It's true, Alex. We started by understanding the very roots of overthinking, how it starts, and what our common triggers are. We've equipped ourselves with a whole toolkit of techniques, and now, in this last episode, we're going to weave them all together.
Exactly, Lisa. Think of it like preparing for a marathon. We've learned about our body, our breath, our pace, and how to push through challenges. Now it's time to understand how all those elements work together for the finish line and beyond. Today, we'll synthesize everything and talk about your path forward.
So, Alex, for anyone just joining us for this final episode, or for those of us who want a solid reminder, can you walk us through the key pillars of the overthinking cure that we've explored?
Absolutely. We began by focusing on self-awareness. Remember episode 2? We learned to identify our personal overthinking triggers, those particular situations, thoughts, or feelings that send us down the rabbit hole. Recognizing these triggers is the first crucial step to interrupting the cycle before it even starts.
And that recognition leads us directly to the power of grounding, right? Episode 3 taught us to anchor ourselves in the present moment when our thoughts start to race. Simple techniques like focusing on our breath or noticing our physical sensations can pull us out of a mental spiral and back into reality. It's about coming back to what's happening now.
Precisely. Once we're grounded, we can then engage in cognitive reframing, the focus of episode 4. This is where we learn to challenge and rewrite those negative or unhelpful thought patterns. Instead of accepting a spiraling thought as the absolute truth, we actively question it, look for alternative perspectives, and craft a more balanced, realistic inner script.
It's like being a movie director for your own mind, deciding what scenes get a rewrite and what dialogue sounds more believable and helpful. And speaking of choices, episode 5 tackled decision fatigue. We learned that overthinking often paralyzes us when faced with too many choices. The key was to simplify, prioritize, and trust our intuition to move forward with decision making, even when perfection isn't guaranteed.
And that leads us to episode 6, journaling for clarity. Writing down our thoughts, fears, and ideas can be incredibly powerful. It's a way to get those swirling thoughts out of our heads and on a paper where we can examine them more objectively. Journaling helps us unpack complex emotions and identify recurring patterns.
I found that one particularly helpful. It's like building a case file on your own thinking. Then, in episode 7, we talked about activating our action bias. This is so important. It's all about overcoming the inertia of overthinking by taking small, manageable steps. The goal isn't to overthink the action, but to simply do something, anything, to build momentum.
And that momentum helps us embrace a concept we discussed in episode 8. Good enough. This is the direct antidote to perfectionism, a major driver of overthinking. We learned that striving for perfection is often a trap that leads to paralysis and dissatisfaction. Embracing good enough allows us to complete tasks, learn from them, and move on.
The mind-body connection was another huge piece of the puzzle, explored in episode 9. We realized that overthinking isn't just mental, it has physical manifestations too: tension, fatigue, even digestive issues. Learning to calm the body directly helps calm the mind. Things like mindful movement and deep breathing became essential tools.
Definitely. Then, in episode 10, we dove deeper into challenging your narratives. We examine the stories we tell ourselves about our lives, our abilities, and our worth. Overthinking often stems from deeply ingrained, sometimes untrue, narratives. Learning to question and reshape these stories is profoundly liberating.
Episode 11 took us beyond basic mindfulness. We explored cultivating a non judgmental awareness. This means observing our thoughts and feelings without labeling them as good or bad or getting caught up in them. It's about developing a detached, compassionate observation of our inner world.
And then came the real world test, episode 12, applying skills in high pressure situations. We walked through how to use all these techniques: grounding, reframing, action bias, when stakes are high and the pressure is on. It's about translating theory into practice when you need it most.
And finally, in episode 13, we talked about building sustainable habits. Because the truth is, curing overthinking isn't a one-time fix, it's an ongoing practice. We discussed creating routines, seeking support, and practicing self-compassion to make these strategies a lasting part of our lifestyle.
So, as you can see, it's been a comprehensive journey. We've gone from understanding the problem, self-awareness, and triggers, to building the foundational tools, grounding and cognitive reframing. Then we tackled specific roadblocks like decision fatigue and perfectionism with action bias and good enough. We integrated the mind-body connection, challenged our deep-seated narratives, and cultivated a mindful observer within. Finally, we prepared for real-world application and how to make it all stick as sustainable habits.
It really does feel like a complete system now. What are your final thoughts, Alex, on how listeners can continue this path forward?
My biggest advice is consistency and self-compassion. There will be days when you revert to old patterns. That's perfectly normal. The key is not to judge yourself harshly, but to gently acknowledge what happened, perhaps use a quick grounding technique, and then recommit to your practice. Think of it like tending a garden. Some days are sunny and everything blooms easily. Other days require more watering and weeding.
That's a great analogy. And celebrating small wins is important too, isn't it? Noticing when you didn't spiral, or when you made a decision quickly, or when you chose good enough. Those are victories worth acknowledging.
Absolutely. Every instance where you interrupt the overthinking cycle is a win. Don't underestimate the power of small steps compounded over time. Also, remember that this isn't about eliminating all thought or worry. It's about gaining control over your thoughts so they serve you rather than consume you. It's about finding that sweet spot between thoughtful consideration and paralyzing rumination.
And it's never too late to start or to restart. If you've been listening to this entire series, fantastic. You have the roadmap. If you're just joining, go back and listen to the episodes that resonate most with you. You don't need to master everything at once. Pick one or two strategies that feel most accessible and start there.
Exactly. The journey of mastering your mind is a lifelong one, and we hope the Overthinking Cure has given you the foundational knowledge and practical tools to navigate it with more ease and confidence. Remember the core principles. Be aware of your triggers. Ground yourself in the present. Reframe your thoughts. Act decisively. Embrace imperfection. Care for your mind and body. Question your stories. Observe without judgment. And practice with kindness towards yourself.
It's been an honor to explore these vital strategies with you, Alex, and with all of our listeners. We've learned so much together.
The process has been incredibly rewarding. You've got this. Take these tools, integrate them into your life, and you'll find that the spiral of overthinking loosens its grip, replaced by a sense of calm, clarity, and empowered action. Thanks for listening to the series.